Well, and there we are. We're here live on Amazon with author Judy Lowe. She's got a number of children's books. We've got highlighted in the carousel the little white light, and actually I have it here on the tablet as well. I love the Kindle Reader. I was just thinking, and Judy and I were talking just briefly in the green room before we went live here. And Judy, I'll give you a moment here in a moment to introduce yourself. But even with children's books, being able to put them on a Kindle, on the digital reader, everywhere you go, you could have your whole library of children's books. You would never be without your child's favorite. But Judy, welcome to Amazon Live, and why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? And you've got beautiful books on display, but tell us where you are and what is going on in Judy's world.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to have this wonderful experience with you and anyone watching, children, parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. So my name is Judy Lowe. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm a children's author. I taught school for 50 years. I retired in 2017 with 50 years of teaching. So I have that background experience, kindergarten through 6th grade, talented and gifted. So I have a number of several children's books. They're all in English and Spanish, and one just recently came out in French. I have them in paperback and hardback.
That's wonderful. I was just, and I love the display that you've got set up there, but the house there, I have to say, it's just a very Texas house with the brick there.
Yes.
So it just looks wonderful, and my wife would be very happy because you've got your fall Thanksgiving decorations up.
A little trim here and there.
Yeah. So thank you for teaching. Thank you for protecting our future. Every time I talk to a teacher, I'd like to thank them and thank you for protecting our future, because you're taking care of the children. That is our future. And so my wife is also a teacher, so I've kind of experienced that life. When we would come into the end of August, when our school years would start here in Oregon. Mm-hmm. I would often tell her, well, I'll see you in June.
Yeah, right.
Teaching is very involved. And yes. One of the things, and I'll ask you this too, is that the best teachers take the curriculum and they go, oh, that's an interesting idea, and then really write their own. And I'm thinking, if you're a children's author, you probably did a lot of creating your own curriculum as well.
Oh, yes. And even though the school district had a curriculum for us to go by, I always added to and complemented whatever they also had given us, and then added other things into it to bring it a little more life into it.
I love it. That's it. That's what I say. The best teachers, they just take the base and they go, okay, you gave me something to start with, but I got to teach.
Right.
What grades were you?
Kindergarten through 6th.
Oh, okay. So you taught all of those.
Yes, but when
Any
I started
particular?
teaching, kindergarten wasn't even in the school district.
Okay.
TEA, Texas Education Association in Austin, didn't even recognize kindergarten in the school district at that time in 1966, in the
Okay.
last century. See, I can say that now. So, uh,
Well, it's funny you say that, 'cause we had a house that was built in 1997 that we were selling,
oh,
and I told my wife I want to advertise it as having turn of the century charm.
there you go. There you go.
So yes, 1966 you started,
Yeah.
and kindergarten, yeah, it
And
didn't exist.
seventh grade was in elementary school at that
Oh
time
wow.
still. Oh yeah. Kindergarten was a couple of years later. So seventh grade, and so of course they thought they were grown since they were the older ones, and so they. But anyway, yeah. So eventually, of course, that shifted, and the district moved seventh grade into middle school. Then at
Mhm.
sixth grade was the oldest group, and then several years later, kinder came in the picture. So everything started evolving.
Yeah. And what did you have a particular age or grade that you preferred, you liked best?
Oh, I think of course I enjoyed the older ones because they could handle many different areas. But I probably went the middle of the road with third or fourth grade.
Hmm.
Um, it was just everything was a challenge, and yet they really were thirsty for it.
Hmm.
So I helped them just slide right in there.
And my wife, when she was teaching, she loved a fourth grade
Yeah.
because they were old enough to be able to do a lot of different projects, but they still needed you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
And so uh, I'm thinking, if you've taught for that many years, you must be in contact. You must have had contact with some of your students as they've grown and moved into their life. Any fun stories from there?
Oh, I have seen several of my students off and on through the years as they grown up and uh, graduated from uh, middle school into high school, and then a couple afterwards that.
Mm,
So, and I've even had some of the former students' children, um, and then it was really. Uh, I felt like I was part of the family.
mm,
And some of the parents have even kept up with me too. So that's been
mhm.
real wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. I love the being able to see the generations
Yes.
through the school. And as a teacher, you are creating your own curriculums. Any particular areas of teaching, math, reading, or sciences that you personally enjoyed more?
I enjoyed the history or geography of many of the things that we did,
Hmm.
and bringing life into that for them, and teaching the research skills and how to do an outline, how to
Okay.
write up a a script if they were doing something in that form,
Hmm.
and doing research projects. I really enjoyed working with them on those things.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a lost art in a lot of ways,
Mhm. You don't
and
know much
being
about
able to
that
use the
today.
research materials, reference
Mhm.
books.
Right.
Yeah, you were telling me a story before we came on.
Oh, there was some.
Go ahead, go ahead. I thought it was great. I loved it. I loved it.
Well, I forgot which one I'd shared with.
Oh, we were talking about encyclopedias.
Oh, yes. Um, as time has passed in education, um, I went to the librarian at one of my schools where I was and asked the librarian if she had an extra set of encyclopedias that I could use in the tag classroom. And she said, no, that everything is online now, all that kind of extra stuff. And so I said, that's fine, well and good, but I want the children to know how to handle an encyclopedia and to look for the guide words at the top of the page and so forth and so on, and how to know how to utilize it. So I just dismissed it. And several days later, she came out to the portable and said, well, you know what? I found that I have an extra set that you're welcome to have. So I said, I'll bring my cart. And so loaded it all and rolled it back out to the portable and used it out there in the portable with the students.
That is great. I think that your students then got a little extra boost over some of the other classes of being able to have all of that knowledge in fingertips.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's that's what we said. We used to call Google Books.
Yeah.
So, it's great. Yeah, I was just thinking about all the teachers that I had throughout my grade school, and they just have an impact on you because, of course, the really good teachers not only taught me a subject, but they taught me about life.
Yeah.
And that is really, I think that's a challenge. And maybe as things have changed in the school, I don't know if it's harder or easier.
I think it's definitely a challenge. Things have really become, well, as we all know, in these last 2 years particularly, it's been a challenge for everybody in so many different ways, and to readjust to that particular situation and how to handle it, how to communicate, how to get along. And so it's just been another life skill to grow with.
Yeah, it's just this whole pandemic has been really tough. I know that when the schools were closed and they were doing a lot of the online teaching, that it was, so my son was in high school. He was a junior in high school and then a senior. And that's a little bit easier. My wife, having been a former school teacher, was much easier for her. But I really felt for those parents with really young children in those grade school age, and to try to get them the right education, and the parents themselves not necessarily being educators.
Yeah,
It would be a challenge.
true. There are so many different little skills that not necessarily every parent would know how to put that respective skill across to where the child would remember it and carry over the next day and the next day and so forth. But it's been a very much a challenge for everybody, parents as well as students, and the children need, because it's just part of growing up at those young ages, to have associations with their friends. It's just that's just part of growing up, and I know many of them missed that because they didn't have it.
It's an important part of the curriculum that isn't part of the curriculum, right?
Yes. It's just part of life.
Exactly. And I was just going to think, as we talk about your journey too as an author. When I was a kid, of course, we had a lot of the little golden books, and
Yes.
those were the first books my parents read to me, and as I learned to read, those were the first ones that I used. And I was just thinking about your book, and particularly this one, the little white light. And I was just gonna pull it back up here and show everyone this picture.
Yes.
Let me just get that a little bigger there. There we go. Yeah, this was I really like the art on the watercolor pictures on there. But tell us about writing this particular book, and it's won awards. I mean, this is not your run-of-the-mill book. This is really
No,
something, and I really enjoyed reading it.
thank you. Well, that's all of my stories are based on my true experience, but I wrote them in a fiction format. And
Mm,
the little white light was came about with my husband's health issues at that time.
mm,
Um, he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and over a number of months, it seemed like longer than that, but over several months, they finally got that resolved. But
mm,
then he slowly started slipping into dementia, going into Alzheimer's. And it was one night I got him in bed, and then I got in bed and turned the light off. I laid there and I talked to Jesus. I talked to my dad, who's been up there since 1971.
mm.
And all of a sudden, if this were my bed and that were the corner of the ceiling, all of a sudden there was this blink. It wasn't a strobing light, it was just a soft, gentle blink. It
Mm,
didn't rattle my nerves. I didn't get all shook up about it. I
yeah,
just thought, well, I know when they build homes, they don't put electrical outlets in the corner of the ceiling. And then you have to get a chair or a ladder and crawl up there and plug it in. It ain't going to
right,
happen.
right.
So I just thought, nah. So I just turned over, went to sleep, didn't give it another thought. Days and nights passed. It never even entered my mind. Then another night came along. I got Sam in bed. Then I got in bed, turned the light off, and laid there, talked to Jesus, talked to my dad, and blink. So I just decided I was going to talk to it. And I said, well, hello, little light. So glad to see you this evening. So
Mm,
I started getting sleepy and turned over, went to sleep. The next morning, as my internal clock was waking up, I turned over and looked at the clock and it said 4. I said, oh, I'm not getting up at 4. The answer is no. So then I turned my head and looked to the corner. And for the first time in the morning, it blinked. So I decided I'd greet it again. So I said, well, good morning, little light. So glad to see you this morning.
oh boy.
From then on,
Mhm.
every night, every morning, and sometimes during the day, that little light has made its presence known. Even now,
Mm,
after Sam has passed, and 6 years after Sam passed, my mother came into my home with everything she had. Bless her heart, she was in dementia. Now I'm going around the second time around,
yeah.
eventually the second time around with hospice.
Mm,
So it was the fall of 2012. Mother went on hospice, and that's when I decided I was going to write a story about that little light, and that's the result. And it's been so well received, and
mhm,
I'm just thrilled. It took first place for stories for children in Ontario, Canada. It took another award in Boston, Massachusetts from the New England Book Festival. When the Spanish edition of it came out, it took first place for stories in Spanish for children in Denton, Texas at the North Texas Book Festival.
wow. Yeah, that is wonderful. And I've just highlighted in the carousel the Spanish version
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
And I just I'll pause and remind everyone again. We're talking with Judy Lowe. We're talking about her books, so specifically La Pequeña Luz Blanca, right? The
Uh-huh.
Little White Light. And
Yeah.
it's also in French.
French.
And so there's a number of things, and I'll just encourage you, go ahead and click on it, take a look at it, maybe add it to cart. This is a great gift. This
Really.
is the time of year to give a gift,
Yeah.
and children's books like this are not just for children.
No, I've
So,
had several parents make that similar comment. They
mhm,
say, I'm so glad to find a children's book that doesn't necessarily spell out any particular religion, but
mhm,
is general. And
mhm,
that's what we need, not
mhm,
just children, but adults as well. And I think
yeah.
you're so right.
Well, and just knowing your story, that has fed into this. And that's what I love about these author interviews. The book is great. The art is beautiful. The
Thank
story is really nice.
you. Yeah.
And it gives me a chance to kind of put myself in there and to think about that light. And
Yeah.
one thing that we do know for sure, there's a lot more that we don't know than what we do know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people say, well, I heard Judy talk about this light and there's some explanation, I'm saying, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because there's more that we don't know than what we do know.
Exactly. And I
And
still see it every night and every morning.
there's a reason. There's
Yes.
a reason for that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you're able to share that with us in this story. And I just think what a great comfort that is after all these years for you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
now
know.
to be able to share that.
I've read that story to a number of elementary young children, like first grade, kindergarten, and I'll never forget. I had just read it to a group of children um, at a book festival, and one little boy raised his hand and he said, "So, what was the little light?" And a little girl said, "Oh, don't you know? It was Jesus." And then another little girl said, "I think it was her guardian angel." I said, "I love both of your answers.
Hmm.
They're great." So,
And yeah, being able to spur a child's imagination. I mean, as a teacher
mhm,
that that imagination is what's given us all this technology that we have today.
mhm,
All of the art, all of the music,
yes,
it's all out of someone's imagination.
mhm,
And
and
how do we help
creativity, yes,
cultivate that? Hmm.
right,
Yeah. So I was just thinking that this book, because it's also in Spanish, it's also in French.
mhm,
So if you are a native speaker of one of those three languages and you're interested in learning another one, my recommendation is buy 2 or 3 copies.
there you
Buy
go.
one in each of the languages
Mhm,
and just expose yourself, expose your children, your grandchildren, your nephews, your nieces, your neighbors' children. A book like this is one of those great things on Amazon. Click add to cart, and you can put in an address. You can send it directly to someone that you know across country, and
mhm.
have it delivered right to them. And what a great gift at this time of year. We talk about it's Thanksgiving. We love to take that time to be thankful. And what better way than to give a gift of reading and a story? And now we know Judy's story behind the little white light.
Yeah. May I share something about that
Please.
also? A couple of years ago, I was at a Kroger grocery store here in North Texas, signing and selling my children's books. This lady and her son, and this was before, it was still summertime, but public school hadn't started yet, but it was like a couple of weeks away in August. And her son was going to be starting seventh grade, and he'd signed up to take Spanish 1, knowing nothing about Spanish, where the verb goes as compared to where it goes in English, et cetera,
Mhm.
et cetera. And so I was engaging with her and the son, and she said, "Oh, but that's for elementary age children." And he said, and I already had it in Spanish at that point in time. And so I said, may I suggest something?" And she said, "Of course." So I said, if you got the paperback English and the paperback Spanish,
Mhm.
and say you turned to this particular page in English, and you found that same page over here in Spanish because of the illustrations, you could match it. And as he's learning through the skills of Spanish
Mhm.
1, it's going to make the transition easier so
Mm.
he can follow the words. So it's going to make it so much easier for him to understand as he goes. And if he goes and signs up for Spanish 2, then he's already got those skills a little bit. It's going to make it easier on the
Mhm.
translation and transition. And she said, well, so she looked at her son and she said, what do you think? And he said, Mom, I want the English and the Spanish. He was getting it better than Mom was getting it. So they both walked out with that along with their groceries. And as they walked out, I heard this child or somebody saying, thank you, Ms. Lowe. And I was looking around. He was standing over there and he was just waving, thank you, Ms. Lowe.
Oh, what a great story.
So,
It is so important in today's world. And, we found through the pandemic that, we've done a lot of this type of video conferencing, right? Connecting up with people from around the world.
yes.
And a lot of people whose native language is different than ours. And my experience has always been that if you even study just a little bit of that language, Spanish or French, or whichever language it is, you cannot separate culture from language. So I start to get a little bit more familiar with the culture for those people who speak that language. And so that is such a wonderful story for that little child.
I haven't forgotten that. And that was like 3 or 4 years ago now. So that was really a long memory.
Yeah. Now, I love to talk about the illustrations because with every author that does a children's book, especially, there's a very particular image that you have in your mind, in your brain, as to what the character looks like, what the light's going to look like, the bedroom, and how. Tell us about the process with your artist.
Well, the illustrator was certainly not me. No. If I had done it, it would have been in file 13, never to be seen again. So I have a friend that is so great at that she did all the illustrations in conjunction with another friend of hers. And in fact, they did several of the books. And she read my mind. They both read my mind exactly to the T. And some things they put in there that I never even mentioned that I was blown away. For example, there's one page in there about Penny and the little white light would even appear while she was playing the piano. The piano was an old upright piano, not a lower model, but a very tall. In fact, when I was that age and maybe a little older, we had an old German Euphoria. It was, my dad worked where he worked at that time. There was a gentleman from Germany, and they were wanting to get that family was wanting to get rid of that. And so Dad had to say, have you got a truck? I'll help you load it and I'll pay you this. And so they did. And in it rolled. And it was an old player piano. It did that part. Yes. It had across the top, there was the little door you'd slide, and there were the little levers below near the keyboard. But that part didn't work anymore. But the keyboard was fine. And I had a metronome that sat on the top to help me keep my beat going as I was taking piano lessons and practicing. So I never mentioned that kind of piano to the illustrator. And yet they had it right on the button.
And it's just beautifully done here in this watercolor. It's the colors on the piano and stuff. It's not just, they didn't just paint a brown piano or it's very elegant. I think the whole book is this way. Yeah.
Yes. They did a wonderful job. I couldn't have said anything else. It was like they knew and they read my mind through the airwaves.
That's great. Just remind everybody, we are here talking with Judy Lowe, author of a number of different books. We're talking about The Little White Light, but she's got some other books that we can also talk about. beautiful story of how you decided to write this particular book, The Little White Light.
Mhm.
And so, again, I just encourage people click on it, add it to cart, send it to friends, learn a new language. Maybe that's something you should do this
Mhm.
year. Start with Spanish, start with French.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. So get 2 copies. Get one in your primary language, one in a secondary language,
Mhm.
and you'll have fun in 2020. It's a great time of year to add gifts. And so uh, I was just going to say we have some other books like MJ's New Friend,
Mhm.
and maybe we can talk about this book.
Yes, that story was based on the fact that my husband had an inquisitive interest in the 1947 landing of that spacecraft in Roswell, New Mexico,
Okay.
in the last century in
Yeah.
1947, um, and he was a high school biology teacher at higher sciences here in Dallas ISD, um, and it wasn't until after he had passed, I was going through a number of boxes in the garage that holds all that wonderful stuff you forgot you had or thought you donated, gave away, or sold,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And as I was going through this particular box of wonderful stuff, there were three books, paperback books, that had to do with that subject matter. And
Mm.
I sat there and I looked at them and I thought, oh my goodness. And I looked up at the ceiling in the garage as if it was there. And I said, Sam, I didn't know that you had this inquisitive interest in this subject, but that's okay. You just never brought it up. So I took those 3 books in the house, and over a number of months, I read a number of pages out of each one. And I thought, oh
Mm.
my goodness. Well, the
Interesting.
little light had already come out. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, and there was that light that, bingo. And I said, something about this is going to be the second story.
Mm.
So I just thought, okay, this, I decided MJ's New Friend. So the new friend came from a star cluster system. And there's
Okay.
more than 3 or 4 out there. There's more that we probably don't even realize. But I
Yes.
researched a number of those star cluster systems I was familiar with. And out of the ones I researched, I decided that this new friend was going to come from Pleiades. And in the back of the book, I put 1 page of facts about Pleiades.
Mm.
Another name for Pleiades is the Seven Sisters,
Oh,
whose
wonderful.
parents were Pleione and Atlas. And so I decided, oh, and it just started falling, everything just started falling into place. So I created this little character, and the whole message in this story is to help a child realize that they can have a friendship with someone who is different from them, irregardless of what that difference is. That friendship will be a special gift that will last a lifetime. Because in that story,
Mm.
MJ plays on a soccer team, and he didn't know this new boy. He was watching from the sidelines, and there was something about him he just liked, but he couldn't put his finger on it. And yet he was different because it was his physical outward appearance. The other boys didn't want to have anything to do with him because he thought he was so different. You better stay away,
Mm.
get involved, and that kind of thing. But MJ wanted to develop that friendship, and he did. And as he did, and as time goes through the story, the other boys started stepping up slowly and accepting him
Oh,
and
wow.
teaching him, what is that round thing you all keep hitting? Well, he's from a start. He doesn't know anything about soccer.
Sure. Yeah.
So they start teaching him all the techniques of soccer. And one thing led to another. And he points to the sky and he shows them the star cluster system that represents Pleiades.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, it's that teacher in you where you've provided that information. But I would imagine, as you said, that the little uh, the little white light was one that came from your experience,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking that as a teacher, you have probably seen something similar to this, and that this story is also coming
Yeah.
from some real life.
Mhm. Well, I like to incorporate some character traits that we all have as human beings,
Hmm.
and helping children to understand the difference between whether it's physical appearance or the dialect of someone's speech, accepting that makes us all part of the human race.
Yeah,
And that's why I was trying to emphasize that particular feature.
yeah. That's really great. And then you also had that one translated, and I highlighted that here
Hmm.
as well in the
Hmm.
carousel. So we're talking with Judy Lowe, author of number of different children's books. But again, these books are not just for children. You
No.
might enjoy this yourself. Uh, get some hot chocolate, sit by the fire, sit by the window, and just relax and let and just enjoy the art, enjoy the stories. They're right here in the carousel. You can add that. So, Judy, you had this also translated, and I'm
Hmm.
just thinking of the challenges of translation. I remember hearing a story about Colonel Sanders' chicken
Oh,
going into China,
uh,
where they translated it's finger licking good,
hmm.
uh, and the way that it meant, the way that people understood it in the Chinese language,
Hmm.
in Mandarin, when they translated it, it said that this chicken is so good you'll eat your fingers off.
Yes, I know.
So, so tell us a little bit about what the process is like when you have a book and you want to translate it into a different language.
Well, I came in contact through another lady that helps me with a number of different um, parts of this whole process, who knows several languages. And so, in talking with her about translating, and she said, "Just give me the book, Judy. I'll do the translations." I said, "Oh, good. Here." And so she did all and even, yes, and that then I um, in that connection found another lady who said,
Mhm.
"I'll do the translation for you in French." So
Oh,
it
wow.
all just kind of fell into place, and it just worked out wonderfully. Yeah.
That is great. So, for someone to be able to willing or choosing to do that for you,
I know, I know.
how wonderful. And
Yes.
and it just opens it up. Again, it's a great way for people to hear this in their primary language, or maybe a language that they'd like to learn, or they'd like to
Mhm.
learn better.
Yes.
And so I just think that's wonderful.
Hmm.
And again, reminding people, we are talking with Judy Lowe here on Amazon Live. Her books are in the carousel. Click on them, add them to cart. Just take my advice. Do the buy with one click. Just get it
Yeah.
and get it home. Give it as a gift.
There you go.
You've also written uh, a couple of other books on almost very scary day.
Well, an almost very scary day. MJ is in that story. I pulled him over too. And actually, my husband's middle initials were MJ. So
Oh,
there's that
okay.
connection with
Yeah.
the letters. Um, so the almost very scary day. In the last century, see, I can say that now. When I was much, much, much younger, I had a blue parakeet, and we called it Mr. Blue because he was blue. So the message in that story is to help a child find the courage, confidence, and compassion. I call it the three C's that
Mm,
they have within them whether the compassion is for another person or for an animal. And in this case, it was a blue parakeet. And there again, there is the learning of the word compassion for something or someone. And that's why I wanted to utilize that and build that into it as well.
Many adults don't understand
Yes.
the word and the concept.
And MJ and Very Scary Day are relative to adults as well. Not children. So
again, that's what I love about the books. We don't have to pick up some 600 word or 600 page book to read. We can take something a little more relaxing, something with some beautiful art, and just really enjoy that opportunity. But if you do have kids or grandkids or nephews or nieces or neighborhood children, some child at church that would really benefit from a little compassion.
Yes.
These are books from Judy are just wonderful. They're all highlighted here. We've got them all in the carousel. You can click and take a look at them because they are just wonderful works of art.
Thank you.
And great stories.
Thank you.
So, and I love that in novels, in many cases, the authors will carry characters through. And so you've done that here with MJ.
I have.
So tell us, I know there's more books somewhere inside your brain or maybe in the works. What do people have to look forward to?
Well, I'm working on another one now, and about all I can tell you at this point is it's about a goose named Dewey.
Okay.
And again, it's based on true experience. And I'll give you just a hint. At one point, Sam had a goose that he had bought at the State Fair of Texas one year. At the close of the fair, the guy was wanting to, sell off these extra geese. And so Sam went home with a goose. And as years passed, he started reminiscing about that particular goose. So we have a city here in Texas that has the first Sunday and special every month. And so we decided we were going to drive over there. And we walked around some people had antiques and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, we walked into the area where there were animals. And this lady had these cages of little small geese. So Sam asked her about the geese. And he said he wanted a male. And so she said, well, now this cage of geese are all male. This one over here is all female. And I said, oh, how do you know? And she said, I've been raising geese for years. I know the difference. I said, okay, then.
Fair enough.
So she said, she told Sam to pick one. And so he looked them all over and he chose one. She put it in a box and we came home with it. Well, as the days pass, like any animal, it grows. And so I got home from school one day and he said, are you in the house? And I said, yes. He said, come to the back door. And so I did. And he said, look out on the sidewalk. So I looked out the back door and I said, I said, oh my goodness. So, because we had said, okay, we're going to name this little creature Dewey. Well, lo and behold, Dewey laid an egg. And I said, well, Dewey is now a duet. So he just grew. It just grew and grew. And Sam would walk down the sidewalk in a neighborhood and do his arms like this. And finally one day, that goose started flapping its wings.
Oh
And the
my.
next there was a man walking out doing something in his yard. And he looked again and he said, "Oh my gosh." But anyway, so that's part of it.
Well, this is going to be a good book. Tell us a little bit. So this is so we've got this real life story. You got this great goose story of Sam and Dewey duet. And so tell us a little bit about your process when you're writing a book. So you have this idea from real life, from your
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
What's the process that you go through? How do you create this book and then determine the art and everything that goes into it?
Well, of course, the inspiration is the true experience, but like I said earlier, I write them in a fiction format, and I'll add some characters, other different characters in there as well, and just build up the story with creative imagination and
Mm,
highlight this and highlight that. Um, and then I bring into it another character trait to emphasize and accentuate that story
mm,
that children and adults can relate to as well as a meaningful experience. And then, as far as the illustrations, I rely on that illustrator and her wonderful artistic ability to take that story and kind of read my mind through it and occasionally chat with her on it. Um, and it just all comes to life.
that's great. And so you're using the same illustrators.
At this point, I am.
Hmm.
And I may have to shift because I think she's doing something, another wonderful thing too, and I'm proud for her. And if that's it, that's okay. That's okay.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's sometimes those images, the style of art,
Hmm.
just becomes a part of the storytelling as well. Of course, we
Yeah.
have some great examples with A. Milne's
Hmm.
Winnie the Pooh stories.
Yeah.
Very simple
Hmm.
pictures, not a lot of detail in them, but
Hmm.
uh, very important to the character. And then, of course, Dr. Seuss with all of his
Oh.
exaggerated, uh, fantastical, anyway.
Yes, I get the picture.
We'll find the right word at some
I
point,
know.
but there was something in his brain that came out, and it was very distinctive. And of
Hmm.
course, as soon as you open it up, you know what you're
It's.
reading.
Hmm.
So it's kind of nice that you've had the same author or the same artist for these stories. But
Yes.
if it changes, then how do you think that will affect your storytelling?
Oh, um, I think it's going to be simply another case of matching the skill with my story, and
Hmm.
it's gonna complement each other
Hmm. Yeah,
in that wonderful way.
yeah. Oh, that's really good. I just, yeah, I'm always just fascinated with the whole process, and how
Yeah.
you do this and get these things. Do you wake up in the middle of the night? Do you have a little pad by your bed?
Well,
What do
sometimes I
you do?
have done that, and I'll wake up and I think, oh, no, better write it down or I'll forget it. You know, so I do that.
Oh, that's great. And so what's coming up? Are you going to be doing some tours? Are you going to be at some different stores? What's on the horizon for you with
Well, tomorrow morning I will be getting up early and driving down Interstate 35 uh, toward Giddings, Texas, which is east of San Antonio,
okay.
to the Giddings Word Wrangler, which is an event that they've been doing there for a number of years with the Giddings Public Library and accentuating literacy and giving the children and parents an opportunity to meet the authors,
Mhm.
read read to a group of children in a school, which I will be doing tomorrow, two different groups there, and then they'll have a reception for the authors that are going to be there. I think there's 20 something authors, and some activities, and then Saturday is the actual event where we have the opportunity to sign and sell our children's books.
Oh, nice.
And within the Giddings Public Library. So, and when it's over at 4, then we all pack our stuff up and everybody goes their 4 different directions.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of nice to have some in-person events again.
Yes. And we're looking forward to more of that happening, because there for a while, everything came to a standstill, which I understand. But I'm part of the Kroger author program. Kroger is the only grocery store chain that has their own author program in the stores. So there's about 20 or 30 of us that are Texas authors that in 2007-ish, a Houston author created the initiative between Kroger headquarters and Texas authors, and they loved it and said, okay, this company is going to support local Texas authors in literacy. Well, when they said literacy, having been a teacher, I said, count me in. So, so we choose from a list of Kroger locations and set it up and go in and sign and sell our books.
Yeah. Well, what a great way for them to give back. Because even in with all the technology and all the advantages that we have, illiteracy is still a problem.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so being able to address that and bring some light to it, how wonderful that they're willing to do that. Kroger is able to do that. And
I have met so many great people who stopped at my table, and I engaged and told them the story of my stories, and they make their selections, and I sign the books, and as they're checking out, well, the cashier will scan the barcode on the back of the book, and it comes out on that one receipt. So no money crosses our hands. It's all done through the cash register.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And again, just being able to see the parents and the children face to face and have them leaf through the book and see the pictures. I'm sure that's just got to be, as an author, I can't imagine something greater.
Yes. It really brings to life the story and what's meant to come from that story for them.
Mm-hmm. So, Word Wrangler, this sounds like a great event for authors.
Yes.
What about aspiring authors? What about people who maybe have been a little timid and haven't published their book or thinking about it? What would you recommend?
Well, if they had the opportunity in college, if they went to college or did where they took an outside course about writing and so forth, that's extremely helpful. And if they had also experimented with their own little stories or in poetry form, and took it that way, there are a number of ways that they could come together with other authors to help build that understanding of how to make it work for them and give them tips. They could sit into discussions with authors or and become an aspiring author, and they've got this little thing they wrote over here, but what do I do with it now? Okay, step 1, step 2, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's I love that. It's so hard to go it alone when you're entering into something that is unknown. And if you can find people that have been there before you, but maybe not too far along, some people that are down there, but some people that are peers, and you can go through it together.
Yes.
And there's just an encouragement and support.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
One helping the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a number of different ways. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's, I really appreciate that. anyone that's an aspiring author, definitely look around in your areas and find
Mhm.
those groups, find those people who you can support, and then they can support you.
Mhm.
And it sounds like maybe if you didn't, or if you need a refresher, take a writing class,
Yes,
community college or something. See if
yes, yes,
you can sit
absolutely.
in. Yeah, it's good writing. As we said, Andy Rooney, who wrote a lot,
Yes.
and he talked about the different technology. He said computers don't make writing better; they would just make it
Mhm.
easier.
Yeah,
So take advantage of your computer, but get some training as well,
true.
and find some people.
Mhm.
So as we're kind of winding down, Judy, and again, thank you for coming here live on Amazon with us and sharing the stories behind the stories. And I just hope that this holiday season, a lot of people decide to click on the book, add it to the cart, share it with their friends, their family, their children, themselves, the neighbors. Give gifts, and learn a new language. Get it in Spanish, get it in
Mhm.
French, get it in
Right.
English. And so we talked about you got Word Wrangler coming up. If
Mhm.
people want to get a hold of you, maybe to come to a signing, or
Mhm.
do you do public talks as well about the stories,
Um, I
or
haven't really done that except
okay,
in conversation with a customer the Kroger store. But they could go on my um, Facebook page for JS Pathways. That's the name of my little company. And they could message me on Facebook.
okay,
They could join my email list on Facebook.
wonderful.
They could email me at on my email at sajudylowe@gmail.com.
There we go.
And of
S.A.
course,
Judy
they're
Lowe.
on Amazon,
Yep.
and they're at the B, letter B, 4R dot store. That's the books for reading. That's in Austin. Um, and through the Authors Marketing International. They have all of my books along with other authors' books there.
Very good. Yeah, I think if people were wanting to learn more, get onto the Facebook page, find Judy books there, or email her. It's just great to be able to support our authors, our local authors, our new authors, creating new classic books.
Yes.
And so this has just been a lot of fun hanging out with you here in from Oregon to Texas.
Yay.
And when the new book comes out, I would love to come have you back and share with a story about Dewey Duet, this group, learn a little bit more about there. Um, and so, what are the final things that you would like to share with people about books, about writing, about teaching, about
Well,
life and interesting stuff?
well, there is a wonderful little quote, and I may not get it all completely correct at this point, but that the art of reading to children when they're so young, before they ever even know words, brings about the love and enjoyment of reading that will last a lifetime.
Hmm. That is great. So those books, the Little White Light,
Mhm.
is these are great stories. MJ's New Friend and The Almost Very Scary Day. These
Mhm.
are great books. Get them and read to them. And the great thing is about a book like this, children love to have it read over and over again.
Oh, yeah. Even the fifth and sixth graders who thought they were grown, I said, "No, dear." Um, that they loved. They could read, of course, by themselves, but I would always incorporate a story within the unit that I was teaching, and to accent it and I would start reading, but then I'd, okay, pick up where I left off and go. And so they loved to be read to, even though they knew how to read.
Yeah.
And it was always a joy.
There's something just very soothing about that, isn't it?
It is. It's
It's like
calming.
getting a massage. It's
Mhm.
having someone read a story to you.
Yes.
You can just relax and
It's very
let your imagination.
calming and peaceful and joyful. Yeah.
Judy, it has been fabulous getting to know you and the stories here on Amazon Live. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll send you into the green room for a moment, but just hang out there.
I will.
All right. We have been talking with Judy Lowe, and I'm just going to put this picture up. The art is beautiful in the book. You can see there's a little nose, there's a little puppy hanging out under the blanket there, the little white light, and MJ's new friend, and the almost very scary day. All books highlighted in the carousel there, written by Judy. And so, with this, I'm just going to say to everybody, thank you so much for joining us here on Amazon Live. We've been having fun. We will continue to do more interviews with authors here on the series. And I'll just tell everyone, have a fabulous day. Cheers.